I think if you look throughout USL, where you see the most comps, most likely would be in USL League One. The markets that started at our base level of 150,000 people in the MSA and grew up to about 750,000. That's just where most of those comps are going to live. So when we look at Greenville being on the higher side, Statesboro, Georgia, you're starting to see a lot of the growth into Antelope Valley, California, Spokane, Washington. So we're going to use a lot of that information from those comp markets to continue to identify what are key components for us here in Pensacola.
What's the size stadium that you look for in this kind of MSA?
Great question, and I hate to give you the answer if it varies. But it does, because we're going to dive into a lot of information, understanding what a multi-use facility would look like, not just for soccer, but also for other events that could be here in Pensacola. If you look in USL, you're going to see a range typically of 5,000 to 10,000, and those are in the existing divisions in which we operate. There are, if you look at USL's recent announcement for USL Division I, on the men's side, which we operate the USL Super League on the women's side, Division I, those come with higher stadium capacity requirements per US Soccer. So we're going to really do some due diligence to find that right size that makes sense for Pensacola and for all the events that would be here as well.
What is it about Pensacola that draws you to our city?
Great question. We've actually mentioned we've been talking to Pensacola for about a year. Certainly it's population, it's the rabid fan base, but we're also looking at the trajectory of the city and how it's growing. So we know that there are a lot of residents moving to Florida. We know that sometimes they come from markets with existing teams or don't. So what we're looking at is providing access to the game, whether it's a fan, a player, a future executive, or someone in the city that just really wants to support the city and get behind it. Sir.
When you, in this context, talk about exclusive negotiations, exclusive to what?
Exclusive to the game of soccer.
To the city of Pensacola? Are you negotiating with other cities?
Sure,
Yeah.
I can actually answer that if you want. Yes, great question.
So the exclusivity, understandably, when any league wants to come in and invest their own money, significant money, then what they don't want to do is do that, and then the city or the county or anybody have the ability, whoever they're working with, to have the ability to just use their due diligence and hand it off to another league. So certainly understandable, but just to be clear, this agreement has no cost to the city. There's no cost to the taxpayer. This is the USL saying we think soccer can work here, and if we're going to spend a year working together, we don't want you to take all of the information that we've spent hard-earned money on and hand it off to another league. So there's exclusivity in that sense, and it's solely with the city.
So is it safe to assume, that's dangerous, but
Yeah.
that the exclusivity negotiations are with this region, the Gulf South region? Are you talking to New Orleans? Are you talking to Jacksonville? While you're talking to Pensacola? In other words, if you're expanding, it would seem that you would want to talk to a number of potential sites.
Can I take that?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And in matter of fact, we actually have a team in Jacksonville already. So if you look at USL Jacks, and as we look at that, USL is expanding into many markets throughout the U.S. And you nailed it exactly on the head. Is that when the league looks to invest in those communities and do a lot of due diligence, we are also making sure that we are working in partnership with the city. We are, as I mentioned, in 46 professional markets throughout the United States, and that continues to grow. And we're in over 200 collectively. So as we look at those, there are some that the league will have mutual discussions going on, but it doesn't mean we're only going to go to one of those markets. We are identifying markets of interest for us that we would like to have professional teams in, conduct our due diligence, and if multiples of those conversations come on at the same time, that's a phenomenal thing because more soccer is better for everyone.
If all goes well, how far down the road are soccer fans looking at before there are teams actually here?
That's a great question. I think in partnership with the city of Pensacola, we're going to work over this next year to identify what that ideal timeline is. I'd love to tell you tomorrow. If we can make that happen. You're committing to that now? Okay, great. We can do that. But we're going to do a lot of due diligence, working within the community, talking to leaders, looking at facilities, understand really what the community wants this to look like. Yes, it's a team within the USL ecosystem, but it's built for Pensacola by Pensacola. So we want it to reflect the community properly. And we want to make sure that's done in the right time and not forced. So when that comes along, it's authentic to the game and authentic to the city.
What is the ask from the city as far as getting a team here, new facilities, that type of thing? Is there any ask at this point?
At this point, I wouldn't say that there is, and you're certainly able to speak to that. I think our discussions are exploratory. And so as we work together, and the league will certainly conduct a lot of research, we may identify something that's already in place. We may identify a project that's on the mayor's calendar and say maybe this is a great fit. So we're going to continue those discussions over the next year, and there'll be more information to come when that
So
happens.
you're looking for the facility to be publicly owned, or y'all own the facility?
It's all part of the discussions. The
Okay.
league technically doesn't own facilities.
Okay.
I'm going to be upfront about that, but we would work with, hopefully, local leadership, and I don't always mean civic leadership in this case,
Right.
when it comes to discussions about potential team ownership,
Got it.
and potential facility leases or ownership or operation. All that's part of our discussions over the next year.
Let me add too, on just a couple of those things. Again, just to reiterate, what I appreciate, I get lots of ideas in my email and people that want to meet. Our ears as a community should perk up when someone says, we're willing to come spend 6 figures of money of no obligation to the city whatsoever because we believe in this market. And I think, so that's a statement, I think, in and of itself, and certainly a compliment, I think, to our community, to our growing community. And that we're a city in demand, and this being another example of that. And then second, I've looked at how the different stadiums have been put together, and we've had those conversations, and every community is different. I was very clear about the kind of the state of facilities in our conversations with USL. Obviously, we have an aging Bay Center that will continue to be what I believe, at least from the city's perspective, number one priority is the fixing of the Bay Center. But I think this comes at a good time, not to throw one more thing into the gumbo, but I think it's a good ingredient to throw in to talk about what is a second facility, what's got the most viability, what's got the most investment and the best return. I think from a timing perspective, this is certainly a better conversation to have today than it would be a year from now or 2 years from now as we try to outline the long-term vision of the rehab or construction of facilities in our downtown. So I would say coincidental timing, but very, very good timing in that aspect.
And as you're exploring whether to bring it, what are the things you're looking for that will make you pull the trigger on getting it to the equation?
That's a long list. Luckily, we're already to the first part of being here, right? That's exciting for us to be in the market. And you've probably seen some similar announcements in some other cities throughout the United States. That list that we'll work with over the next year, as I mentioned earlier, will be engaging a fan base, understanding the desire for the soccer community, but also the sporting community, and even the business community to make sure that when a team operates here, men's or women's or both professional, is to make sure it's sustainable and it's here for a long time and it will properly represent the city.
So Mayor, are you looking for this facility to be done inside the city limits?
Yeah, I think so. I think.
It's with you.
Yeah, well,
Right, with the city.
I think that a big part of the model of their league, and again, there's lots of leagues playing lots of sports in this country.
Right.
Someone who's been around for almost 40 years and has done it, I think was a big part of my criteria. Again, when we get lots of emails and interest about all sorts of things, we look at, have they done it before? Have they gotten it across the finish line? And do they have credibility in the space? And certainly the USL does that. But part of that model, I believe, would be the addition of downtown vibrancy. There's no issue with other facilities that we have in the rest of the county, but I think for the model to work, and especially as a mixed-use model, and certainly I'm not speaking for the league, I'm speaking for me, in that I think the viability of a new facility that would host 1 or 2 professional soccer teams would also be able to play football there. I think clearly, and that's why I mentioned, perhaps it could be an amenity that the school district could use. We've got some aging stadiums around at different high schools, and that's a model that's used in Birmingham and Tallahassee and many other cities where you have some kind of centralized stadium and allow our kids to play on a $1 million scoreboard and be able to have that experience. So any facility, and it's so early to speculate. Where would it be? What size? I mean, I think that's what this year is about. Is us trying to figure that out. But clearly, the facility would not be one that would only be used the nights per year that the soccer team's playing. This would have to be something that could be used for football, for festivals, for things like that, to be able to have the viability for it to be a successful return for our citizens. So I'm looking at it as something downtown and something that is certainly versatile, in terms of its use.
Who initiated this conversation? Was it the City of Pensacola, or did USL reach out to you?
Yeah, actually, USL had reached out to us, and again, I think that's another example and that we very much appreciate. They probably weren't. They probably don't talk to lots of mayors that were sports writers for 12 years before this. So I probably had more questions on the front end than most mayors, but I also understand the value of it, and Stephen can probably cite the statistics better than me. But I really appreciate that about their long-term strategies. When you look back in history at when World Cups have been played in period every 4 years, but also within the United States, that anticipating with aggressive growth the 26 World Cup, the 27 Women's World Cup, the 28 Olympics in LA, I would fully expect, and right now without those things, you see the game continue to grow in important target markets. So again, I can't cite the stats that I'm sure the USL and that Stephen can, but we know that it's got huge potential, and we expect, and being ahead of this surge of interest, I think, is a smart strategy for the league.
Steve,
Sir.
in markets this size, in the independent owner model, typically how much equity would the independent owners put into ownership?
In terms of a range or specific, I want to make sure I'm answering your question, so.
Sure. In other words, the local ownership that y'all are hoping to accomplish, how much equity? 50%, 100%, 30%?
Again, I hate it varies truly by every location. There are some that are pure private, there are some that are public-private funded, and some that are, the team itself is private funded, but the facility may be public. So it really varies on the city, the stadium, the team ownership, and how all that's come into play over the last 12 to 14 years. As we look at it, you'll see that U.S. Soccer does have standards for team ownership, which we do have to go through a compliance measure every year, and that's to ensure sustainability of the clubs and make sure that they're checking all the boxes, if you will, for U.S. Soccer, which we are governed by. And then U.S. Soccer reaches up to CONCACAF to FIFA. So we are strict in those standards and continue to elevate our team ownership standards to make sure that our teams are viable. I think we learned a lot of lessons, and we continue to make sure that our teams will be around for the years to come.
Have you ever launched a program in a city without local ownership?
Launched a club?
Right.
Not that I'm aware of. I've been with USL, going on 13 years now, and usually that's a key component of our operation.
And let me add to that. That was an important aspect for me, again, with my background and growing up here. I mean, certainly, whether you own a business or you own a professional sports franchise, there's no replicating having local stakeholders be invested in the team. And so while it's a national standard, and I appreciate that the USL meets or exceeds that in terms of making sure that there's that representation there. So what percentage, who's it going to be, all of those, probably 9 steps ahead of where we are now. But the fact that that's important and that's really a requirement, I think is vital. And again, just look around at the Wahoos and at the Ice Flyers and the difference. And with some of with the Ice Flyers in particular, the ebbs and flows of success as it pertains to local ownership. I think Greg is a perfect example of that. This team's been around a long, long time, well past any kind of honeymoon or excitement of just a couple years. They've been around a long time, and I certainly believe that Quint and Greg are shining examples of the sustainability of teams when you have somebody with boots on the ground. So that was an important part to me for sure.
Stephen, the USL, are y'all envisioning a European model where you have a lot of different standards of professional leagues that, like in England, you've got a lot of different leagues, and then they get to play up to the big league if they can earn the right. Is that what y'all are envisioning?
I believe you're referring to promotion relegation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you know about it, because
Just
sometimes we
barely.
can explain the offsides rule, but that's okay. We can go over that later. Potentially. It certainly has been a topic among the league, and I think if you look back 3, 4, 5 years, our fans have certainly been vocal about the desire for, we call them matches of consequence.
Right.
So the ability to move up in between leagues. As I mentioned earlier, there's some standards that have to be in place, and it's not set in stone, but certainly something that our fans have wanted to see, and the league's been in discussions with, and we've mentioned in several interviews historically that we know the fans want it. There's a lot behind the scenes that has to happen before we get there, but it's kind of one of those of potentially.
Right. Okay.
I can't commit to it. I know everybody wants that, and it's a very exciting model.
Right.
As we have now, if you looked to England as an example, USL would currently operate, we're currently in the second division and third division men's space,
Okay.
which would be equivalent to the championship in League One in England.
All right.
With our announcement for a potential USL Division One team or league, that would equate to the premiership. So that would show you kind of how those models are comparative. We don't consider what we do as minor league soccer at all. It is full professional. The player contracts are with the teams, and so the players actually have the ability to become fabric of the communities in which they operate. So you want them to go off and do well, but there are many instances where the players stay and live in the market and will stay even after their playing career is ended.
Good.
Anything else?
I have one more question for
Yeah.
the mayor.
Yeah.
When you, as someone who is from here and with your background
Yeah.
specifically, what was your initial reaction hearing that there was an interest like this in this city? And what does it mean to the city going forward about the growth and the expansion and just the attraction?
Yeah, well, again, I was only half joking when I said, I've covered in 12 years as a sports writer, I've covered lots of leagues at lots of different places, some nicer than others and some leagues more functional than others through a long career of thousands of different things. So my first questions are, of course, I was aware of the USL, not to the level that in terms of how the structure works and the operation works as I am now. So I had a lot of questions because I didn't want to bring something forward or certainly be in partnership with something that I didn't think would be good for our community or that didn't have the longevity or the credibility within the space. And so I've known of USL for a long time, but after this conversation and just knowing what their strategy is long term, what their investment is. And again, you can't replace someone saying, hey, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And we don't just say that we want Pensacola because we want to see what they'll do for us. They're coming to put their own money in and invest their own time. They could be in another market right now if they didn't think that this could work. And so, there's no other level of credibility stronger than saying we're going to put up our bandwidth, our capital, because we believe in your city. And so I think that's an important litmus test that they met, and I'm really excited to see what happens over this next year. Anything else?
Are there-
Yeah.
Oh,
Go
is
ahead.
there any,
One question for you real quick. Do
Sure.
you have some kind of press packet or something we could get for East in our story?
Oh, we can get it to you, yes. I'll have if you can give me an email address, I'll have our media team send it over to you.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
so just being in Pensacola and driving around, are there any locations that stand out to you as a potential site for a stadium or anything?
You're trying to bait me into that, and I see what you're doing. I
You were
think-
talking about that floating one
Yeah,
in the water.
exactly. Did we say floating stadium? I think that'd be epic. In time. I hate to be so early that it maybe leads a conversation someplace that is inaccurate or misleads the public. So for us, I think it's let us do our research, let us work with the city, and then as we continue to move down a path and have more updates, we would like to be as transparent as we possibly can.
And just to add to that, obviously, having it somewhere downtown, there's going to be different dynamics all the way from the space needed to fit a football field in terms of the literal, the width and the length of the facility itself, as well as its viability in the surrounding area. All of those other factors that we're going to have to look at. So, but I don't come in with a preconceived notion of exactly where it's going to go, and certainly they don't. But it's about taking all those things we need and checking all those boxes, and then trying to find the right place. But I think we certainly on the city side, we go in with an open mind about where we can make it work, and what certainly passes the test for USL to come here, as well as what passes the test for all of the other uses that are potential for a venue like this. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. And Stephen will be here. I'll run through our normal stuff, and he'll be here if you guys need anything additional. All right. Well, while we're on the sports theme, I wanted to congratulate Coach Penna and Pensacola State for winning the FCSAA Region 8 championship over the weekend. I believe it was the first time in 32 years. The Pensacola State, and they're going to the national tournament. That they play in the toughest league, junior college basketball league in the country. So to get out of there and to get out of the state winning it is a huge accomplishment. So they're going to Hutchinson, Kansas for the national tournament, and their first round game is against Trinidad State College on Sunday. And to give you perspective of how strong this league is, they were the 7th seed in the state tournament, and they're the 10th seed in the national tournament. So, and because they were able to get all the way out of there, and that's the respect that the Panhandle and the state of Florida has in junior college basketball. So, certainly excited for them. I'm going to go talk to them tomorrow morning before they practice. I think their last practice is at 9 a.m. Wednesday. And then they're taking the bus to Kansas. So, and then also sports-wise, GL52 is in town. We're very excited about that. Thursday through Sunday, it's the inaugural Pensacola Cup, and the races are scheduled at noon each day. If you're out on the water at any point this week, certainly from this building, you can see some of the teams already out there on the 52-footers practicing. But that event will take place Thursday through Sunday, and it'll be 6 teams competing for the first time in Pensacola Bay. And then update on Pallet shelters, the ARPA funding that we have for temporary housing. The city council, of course, had approved the contract with the vendor that is manufacturing them, and so now we're seeking nonprofit agencies to partner with the city, going along the same process that we discussed at the beginning, which is who are those nonprofits that can take those shelters, are ready to take them, and so we have a request for proposals that opened this past Friday and closes on April 14th. So we've been sharing information back and forth. The Homeless Reduction Task Force is helping narrate that conversation with our vendors. We've already had a few different folks reach out and say, can we have 2, can we have 5? So that formal process is now beginning, and there's more information on the RFP, of course, on the city's website. A few quick things for the council agenda that will come out later today, I'm guessing, is you'll see an option extension for Valencia. The good news at Valencia, which is of course parcel 7 at Maritime Park, we've agreed on all terms. We're just down to figuring out parking spaces. So, you guys remember previous to the parcel 5 conversation, we were kind of in a let's do it or not do it posture. We maintain that we still are in that. We're not giving out extensions to options just for the sake of doing it, but considering how close we are, and it was of course due to expire at the end of this month. But we've agreed on all other principal terms with Valencia for them to move forward with their hotel project on parcel 7. But we just got to work out the parking, and we've got a solution for it. Just attorneys need a little more time to get that all documented. And it's a 3-month extension that will go from March to June. So the only reason for the extension, as I'll explain to council, is just for us to sort out that last detail. We have a closure upcoming at the Jefferson Street Garage with our normal annual maintenance. So it'll close on Sunday, April 6th, and Monday, April 7th, from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. So just overnight on Sunday and Monday, the 6th and 7th, so we can get that maintenance done. We're also welcoming a new airline to Pensacola. Contour Airlines is coming to Pensacola International Airport on Saturday. They're starting their service as just a direct between Muscle Shoals and here, and the inaugural flight will land here at 2:15 on Saturday, and we look forward to connecting. It's always great not only to have a new nonstop flight, but to have a new carrier altogether, because what we've seen, and I think Breeze Airways is a perfect example, Breeze Airways started as Tampa. Now we've got Tampa 4 times a week instead of 2 times a week, and a nonstop to Raleigh coming. So, and that was all in a very short period of time. So anytime we have new carriers interested in Pensacola, it can lead to great things, and so we're excited to have them here. I want to congratulate Lieutenant Amy Parsons at our Pensacola Police Department. She graduated the 10-week-long FBI National Academy at Quantico, and she's the first from PPD to attend this in over a decade, and she's the first woman to graduate, a PPD officer to graduate ever from here. And then also a big congratulations to Officer Heather Mallett, who was named our 2024 PPD Officer of the Year. And she's the school resource officer at Washington High School, a trusted mentor to the students, does an unbelievable job there. And as I always tell you guys, man, there's nothing better than going to those quarterly PPD things where people were giving out awards for saving people's lives. We have one gentleman that walked up with his 4 medals of life-saving award, getting his 5th. And my joke was, if I ever need a security detail, I'm going to start with him. So 5 life-saving awards. So it's always great to a chance to connect with our PPD outside of being out on the street, and certainly we're very appreciative of Officer Mallett. And then lastly, H.K. Matthews, the playground equipment's being installed as we speak at 12th and Hayes Street, and it's expected to wrap this week, weather permitting. So another example of our LOST funding going right back into the community, and it was about $180,000 for this project alone, and that playground had been shut down for over a year. So excited to get that going. They've posted some photos, I believe, of the progress on the Parks and Rec Facebook page, but should be coming to a completion here this week. So that is all I've got, and then I'm happy to take any questions you got.
Got a question about the old West Florida Hospital. It was recently vandalized and looks to be in pretty rough shape. Is code enforcement on top of that or doing anything?
I'm guessing you're talking about, or is it the old Baptist Hospital, or are we talking about the Palafox one? Okay, so the old Palafox has been a significant blight to our community for years. I would have put it up with Motor Lodge before in terms of calls for service, in terms of the nuisance and bandwidth that it requires from our police department, from reports of people being on the roof to lots of temporary fixes. Code enforcement fines continue to pile up. I believe they're somewhere north of $60,000. When I got in, I felt that our commercial code enforcement penalties weren't enough. Residential is a difficult animal because of, we're not trying to give fines to people that potentially would put them out of their homes or anything like that if it's a need-based thing. But commercial, you have a little bit less excuse on a commercial building to have boarded up windows and things that are supposed to be temporary that somehow have turned permanent. So it's certainly been a frustrating project, and I've been in close conversation recently with the owners out of New York about this, and what I'd say is I feel like it's probably an appropriate time to get aggressive and do something to get this out of our hair, and that it's now going on. It's got to be well over a decade now. And so unfortunately, that's the shining example when I talk about commercial code violations, that the pull that is on our bandwidth, on our time, and on the safety of the surrounding neighborhood, down in the East Side neighborhood to the east and North Hill to the west. So something's got to be done, and we're getting aggressive to make something happen. So more to come.
Mayor, you talked about Valencia, and you'll have a solution for parking. I guess could you go into a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so if you remember, I believe this is the 8th Amendment to this Valencia lease, which of course well precedes my time. But it's understandable because the conversation around Valencia was based around waiting to see if the structured parking was going to be built, right? So that was kind of why Parcel 7 has kind of been put on the back burner, and was previous to my administration as well, just because we said, well, before we commit to something on 7, let's figure out what the parking's going to be. We've now gone down the strategy both with 5 and 6, and one of the biggest misperceptions of 5, I don't think maybe some of the citizens realize, 5 is going to self-park. So, I've seen complaints of, well, what's going to happen to all the parking now that Parcel 5 is self-contained with its own parking underneath the building, both for the apartment and the hotel. So there's no impact to Parcel 4's parking for 5. Now, for 7, what we're trying to figure out is and we're working with Quint and the Wahoos, who have the Maritime Office Building and, of course, the stadium. They have the parking rights, so to speak, on the majority of those spaces. It's just working with them of what spaces does the city still control that we can give exclusively or non-exclusively to make it happen. So they need about 180 spaces in total. We've got about 100 of that already figured out. So it's just a matter of the other 80. So we're looking at a few different things. We have some rights to move baseball parking over to City Hall. For example, there's ways that we can just reattribute, so we're looking at that. We're looking at Parcel 6 as a possibility. If there's not going to be anything there happening at 6 right there on Main Street for a while, is that something that could be done temporarily? So between all of those solutions, we feel very confident we're going to get this done. If we didn't, we probably wouldn't be extending this option. So, but just when people look at that and say, well, why has there been 8 amendments and why we've been talking about Valencia for that long, it's because they've been in this holding pattern, waiting on a parking garage. Yet I'm still trying to work on the same mindset that I had with 5, is let's kick the can down the road on a $25 million parking structure, for as long as we can, while still allowing these things to be viable. Also, you have to think about, from a development standpoint, if parcel 8 down by the water gets done, and if parcel 6 gets done, maybe it's close enough, but these larger structures, if you're going to have condos and you're going to have a hotel, people are not going to park in a structured garage in 4 and then go walk all the way to 8. I mean, no resident is going to do that. So really, when you think through, and maybe this should have been part of a conversation many years ago, is self-parking is going to be relatively required on these larger ones. I don't mean on 7 necessarily, but on 5 and on 8. Just having a centralized garage on 4 doesn't solve your problem. And so I expect if anything happens on 8, as long as I'm mayor or the mayor's after me, I bet it's going to be self-parked, because a garage in 4 isn't going to cut it. So, but I think we've got a viable solution that won't require a structured parking garage in 4 and can meet the parking requirements for Valencia's project.
With the extension, what do you think the timeline is on actually getting to a lease with hard deadlines?
Well, we're only extending it. If we thought it was going to be longer than 3 months, we would extend it longer than 3 months. But I fully expect that before the end of this option extension, we would be bringing a lease to council.
So what's the betting pool on which one opens first?
I don't know. That's your job. You have the freedom to speculate better than I do.
We'll put the numbers up this afternoon.
Exactly. Yeah. You tell me, Rick.
That's right.
Hey, listen. We'll find out. It's an interesting market right now. Whether it's financing, whether it's materials. I think the best strategy that we continue to follow is let's get as many irons in the fire as we can, and let's see what pans out. And we don't take anything for granted that it's definitely going to happen. But the more irons in the fire we have, the more probability of something good for the community. I had another good meeting and phone call with the Tempo by Hilton developers for New World Landing. That continues to move forward. All they've been waiting on is a DEP issue. Remember, there's some contamination issues down in that area from years ago, but nothing that they can't overcome, and they're expecting any day now to get that through that, and at that point, demolition will begin. So that one's moving full steam ahead. Obviously, Tristan's moving full steam ahead. So it's a great time in Pensacola that people continue to invest here and see the potential we have. Anything else?
One more
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
On the America or the Pensacola Cup, who's putting this on, and why is there no information out there on what's going on?
Well, so GL52, they've been around for quite a while. I can't speak to them having. I've seen some stuff out there on social media, but you'd have to talk to them directly about their strategy to or who they're communicating with. But we're certainly excited to have them. And again, this is just these 6 teams alone will be close to 150 members. Just the crew. The people, the captains, the crew, the support staff, just them alone will be about 150, 160 people, and the vast majority of them have never been here before. So that, for my desk, is a great thing, is to have people that know sailing and invest in sailing, coming to what I believe is a sailing destination in the United States. So, and there could be lots of reasons. This is the first of many. I expect that GL52 is coming back in April. I fully expect that they'll be back in 2026. So, if I'm speculating to your question, I'd say, there's probably some piloting aspect to this, right? Just making sure everything goes the way it needs to go before anybody overpromises anything. So, but what I tell you is they've been great communicating with our team, our staff. Beach is doing a great job handling all the logistics of, and you'll see them. I think there's trailers out there right now on going down to Plaza de Luna, down on Palafox Street, with all their teams and all their equipment down there. So from our desk, they've been great communicating with us, and we're certainly excited to have them.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.